Why is it a river, not a creek?
That's a good question.
What's in a name?
So in terms of a river versus a creek, a river, I think, gives more of a sense of pride, but a creek is something that people find to have more affection for.
The Conestoga River winds and carves through Lancaster County for approximately 64 miles, from its Farm Pond headwaters in Berks County to the Susquehanna River at Safe Harbor. Over the past 250 years, the waters of the Conestoga have helped shape history for this county. From being a source of transportation for the likes of fur trading in the 18th century and providing fresh salt and alum from Philadelphia in the 19th century, to being the lifeblood of recreation during the turn of the 20th century and providing relished relief for Lancastrians during the hot summertime. There's plenty of stories this river could tell.
I'm Ty Lohr with LNP and Lancaster Online, and this is Confessions of the Conestoga, a river story.
Let's begin around 1800. The Conestoga River had several dams, used almost entirely for the hundreds of mills that operated on its banks. Benton Weber, a Lancaster Township engineer and river aficionado, said, "The river helped us build a community by helping us do the work we needed to do and make the products to be distributed and sold." That led to a push to make the river navigable around the late 1820s.
The hope was that canal traffic would come through Lancaster to the Susquehanna and then out to Pittsburgh. Well, they tried to build it fast and they tried to build it cheap, but what they ended up with was 9 dams and locks between where we're standing today and the Susquehanna River. So with all the dams being in place in the late 1800s, the water was deeper and stiller, and that made it a real pleasure to get out and to enjoy. You didn't see the sharp drop-offs along the river. You didn't see all the muck and the sediment laying in it, because all of that had been settled out. Plus, you had the deeper water to be able to take larger watercraft out. So you had steamship paddle wheel boats. You had small pleasure boats that were motorized, or you had rowboats. You had the canal boats that would be pulled up and down as for recreation. The swimming was wonderful. It was beautiful. And then in the wintertime, there was ice skating. You hardly ever see the Conestoga freeze over today because it's always rippling along. But because in the wintertime it was still, the Conestoga froze over many times. So it was a real boon of recreation in every season.
The river runs for 60 miles through Lancaster County, but 2 of the biggest attractions on the Conestoga were located directly across from one another: Rocky Springs Park and People's Bathing Resort. Donald Kautz, a Lancaster photographer and author, wrote about Lancaster's Navy and their impact on the county in his book, The Conestoga River, A History.
Yeah, so where we're standing right now is at Rocky Springs, at the river side of Rocky Springs. So at one point this would have been a bathing beach back in the gay 90s, and also lots of boats for rent. And then right across, which you can see, would be the location of People's Bathing Resort, another bathing beach. There was variously a river shuttle that would go across, but at one point in time there actually was a bridge that people could walk back and forth between the 2 parks. And then about, about a mile further upstream is Conestoga Park. And so Conestoga Park is, of course, where the steamboats would dock, and you could take one of 3 steamboats from Conestoga Park down to here at Rocky Springs over to Peoples. The Emma Bell and the Evelyn B were the 2 Rocky Springs boats. They operated from about 1892. Early 1900s, and there was a flood, a large flood on the river. All 3 boats were, moored, but the 2 of them got loose during the flood. Apparently their operators were on board at the time. So the Emma Bell was saved because it got down to the City Mill Dam, and somebody from the land threw a rope that the captain could catch and pulled them off to the side, so they were able to save that one. Evelyn B unfortunately went over the dam and ended up smashed into the bridge behind the county home, and that was the end of that.
The Lady Gay, though, continued on, finally docking for good sometime around 1915. But the Conestoga was still a staple in the county. Rocky Springs continued to grow and added amusement rides after the steamer stopped on the river. Elaine Stoltzfus became interested in the history of the park after her and her husband Sam bought the grounds in 2001.
It's hard for me to imagine people just spending an afternoon here bathing until I look at some of those old pictures and see, oh, there was beachfront. And, you know, they did have just, they didn't go real far to go away to do those things like we do now. They just wanted to come down out of town someplace real close. So it is hard for me to imagine the river being deep enough for some of those other events, because in our lifetime we didn't see the river that deep other than when it's at flood stage. After the bathing era ended, which would have been around 1918, 1919, and the steamers were gone, then there was rowboats and stuff like that, but then by 1935, and when Joe Fagari owned the park, they had speedboats on the river, and people even today remember of the old Chris Crafts that you could rent. And you would go up the river, not as far as Whitmer's Bridge, but you would go up the river a little ways, spin around there, and come back, you know. So that was more the thrill of the river later.
Much has changed along the banks of the Conestoga, but some activities of yesteryear are still pastimes today, like fishing and boating, though today's boats aren't powered by steam.
There's always been fishing. They're probably not catching the diversity of fish that they did back then. There's still boating. You've got the Conestoga River Club has been helping people with their portages and put in and take out spots, and they really help folks with their kayaking. But there's not a lot of draft. I tried canoeing once, and it was just as much work carrying it over land as it was trying to canoe across the Conestoga.
I would like to tell you the story of a river, but not just any river. This is a river that I love deeply, every ripple and eddy. I'm talking about the Conestoga. The Conestoga River is a bare 63 odd miles long and weaves its lazy way through Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It's not much for whitewater and can be difficult to navigate when the water is low in July and August, and it hasn't even been classified as a river for all of that long. It frequently gets overlooked as a recreation destination. It is arguably the most historically significant river in the nation. Sound like a bold claim? Maybe. You want to know what I've discovered most new when I'm on the river? New friends. Because I can sit here and I can tell you story after story after story of my personal experience on the river, but it's been the people that I've shared them with. You know, the first time paddles, you know, getting that on the water connection to people that I've only spoken to before, and we now have a bond. You know, so it's always new. It's always something extra. You know. It's going under a bridge that you've driven over 1,000,000 times and seeing a new angle, new perspective. It's the hidden mystery that's around the next bend. Wow, look at that. You know, it's the history. It's everything.
So it's this marvelous story of the different aspects of our community, how the river has helped us, provided recreation as well as transportation, helped us with commerce and manufacturing, but we just have used it as a ditch.
Planned cleanups along the riverbanks have helped remove some trash from the Conestoga over the years, but there's still plenty of room for improvement. Todd Roy said that he knows of some massive junk, like refrigerators and trailers, not to mention hundreds of tires, that still litter the bottom of the river today. He said his club is also hoping to get some grants in the next couple of years to help create better access points along the river. Others, too, are trying to help figure out what's next for the Conestoga. The Lancaster Conservancy, which was founded in 1969, is dedicated to preserving and maintaining natural areas, like Holly Point Nature Preserve in Lancaster City. Dan Ardia, a biology professor at F&M, has been working with the Lancaster Conservancy in learning about how wildlife and people use and impact the river.
Well, so in general, we found across the county that the more people that go into the woods, that has an effect on wildlife habitat use. Not surprisingly, when busy trails are visited all day, every day, wildlife shifts their activity to be more active at night or to use different parts of a preserve. And so many of these informal green spaces are not visited very heavily by people, so they're a refuge for wildlife. So animals like red foxes can spend the day in the forests around Sunnyside, for example, and then come out at night and forage. So they play really an important kind of a reservoir for places for animals to kind of spend the day shift and then come out at night and do their work, so to speak.
It's not just a place to dump trash and it somehow magically washes away. It doesn't. It just stays there and it ends up in someone's backyard or whatever. And so, don't use the river as a dump.
But I also hope that we see these spaces as an area that we need to steward, and we have an obligation to future generations. And so when you enjoy beautiful areas like the Conestoga, to then make the preservation of them, part of how you approach living in your city, engaging with your community, because they're not going to protect themselves. They need us to care, and if you're out enjoying them, it's really important to do your part and pay it forward.
It's not just a river that we have to deal with. It's our river, and the more people can enjoy, whether it's just hiking along the river or fishing or kayaking, maybe someday even swimming.
In a 1912 journal entry for the Lancaster Historical Society, Frank Diffenderfer wrote, "One of the most beautiful streams in the world flows quietly through the green meadows and along the sunny braes of Lancaster County and zigzags around the southeastern boundaries of this city in a way that makes it an unending pleasure to all who are thoroughly acquainted with its unnumbered attractions."
This is the stuff that matters. The river matters, of course it matters, but the river matters because of us.